Persona video game franchise, also known in Japan as Shin Megami Tensei, is a massively successful series of JRPGs created by video game company Atlus. The most recent Persona game to be released by Atlus is Persona 5, released in 2016. After its initial release in 2016, Japan's advertisement boards were lit up with Persona 5 promotions, restaurants started offering special limited edition collaboration menus, and even themed pop-up cafes were established worldwide, all dedicated to the game. Soon after, an animated TV show by the same name was created and aired in 2018, which follows the plot of the original game. Evidently, Persona 5 is an extremely popular and well-known video game. It was an extremely innovative JRPG that introduced new unique mechanics and told a compelling plot. What most people don't know, however, is that the core plot devices in the Persona 5 story, and for that matter the entire Persona franchise, are heavily based on theories of Carl Jung, a psychoanalytic psychologist from the 1900s. The game so heavily references Jung's theories that some of his theories are directly named or explained. In fact, the name of the franchise itself is already a reference to his theories. To begin explaining all the connections and references that the game makes, however, we first have to explore the story of Persona 5. Persona 5 follows the story of the playable character known in-game as Joker. Due to some complications with the high school in his hometown, he moves to live with a foster parent in Tokyo and attend Shujin Academy. Things quickly get interesting, however, as one day he arrives at where his school was supposed to be, but in its place was a castle. After he and a friend get caught by guards in the castle, Joker has an awakening moment and gains magical powers. In their path to escape, Joker discovers a strange character who looks like a round cat mascot
I am not a cat!
by the name of Morgana, who helps them secure an escape route. They escape the palace and return to normal Tokyo, only to get caught by police and dragged back to Shujin Academy, mysteriously not a castle anymore. That night, Joker starts to have a series of recurring dreams where he is locked in a prison. Through his dreams, we begin to learn more about why these weird things are happening. Igor explains that he is the proprietor of the prison, also known as the
Velvet Room.
This Velvet Room is a consistent, important location in all of the Persona games where the protagonist manages their personas. Igor explains that
Personas are, in other words, a mask, an armor of the heart when confronting worldly matters.
He also introduces Joker to the Metaverse Navigator, a smartphone app which
will allow you to come and go between reality and palaces.
These definitions are almost exactly pulled from Carl Jung's 4 archetypes. In the Handbook of Jungian Psychology, archetypes are defined as hidden forms that are activated when they enter consciousness and are shaped by individual and cultural experiences. Personas are one of the 4 archetypes, along with shadows, which we will talk about later. Jung defined personas as a kind of mask, designed on the one hand to make a definite impression upon others, and on the other to conceal the true nature of the individual. Personas are glorified, powerful, and fake identities created to hide our true selves and leave an impression in the collective unconscious. Jung also wrote in The Structure of the Unconscious that the most far-fetched mythological motifs and symbols can appear as personas. Personas in the game are powerful and magical beings that lend characters their power based on their personalities. For example, Morgana's persona is Zoro, because despite him being a cat,
I am not a cat!
he is gentlemanly and chivalrous. This persona is a reference to a modern fictional character created in 1919 by New York-based pulp writer Johnston McCulley. Zoro is known as a masked swordsman of justice who fought in California against corrupt officials during the era of Spanish rule. He always left his Z mark with his rapier wherever he appeared. Aside from Zoro, all the personas of the main characters in the game are derived from mythological symbols and icons: Arsene, Captain Kidd, Carmen, Goemon, Johanna, Necronomicon, Milady, and Robin Hood. The next day, Joker re-enters the metaverse using the app. There, they meet Morgana again, who starts to explain in depth how the metaverse works. Shujin Academy turned into a palace in the metaverse because that was how the PE teacher of the academy unconsciously views it. The PE teacher of Shujin Academy, Kamoshida, is a cocky and abusive volleyball coach because he won an Olympic medal in the past. Therefore, he unconsciously viewed the school as his castle and he the ruler. Everything that happens in this distorted reality only happens in Kamoshida's unconscious mind as delusions. Kamoshida in the palace is not Kamoshida himself, but Shadow Kamoshida. The guards in the palace are also known as shadows. They only exist in the unconscious of the palace ruler to protect the treasure. The treasure of the palace can be anything. For Kamoshida, it was his Olympic medal. Stealing this item from the palace will remove the root of the unconscious distorted desires of the palace owner, thus changing their minds and making them realize their distortion and delusions. Shadows are also part of Jung's 4 archetypes. Jung explained that the shadow personifies everything that the subject refuses to acknowledge about himself. The shadow manifests fear, attachments, aggression, and other negative emotions. Persona 5 also references this Jungian theory almost exactly. The shadows in palaces are usually guards that protect the treasure of the palace. In other words, they represent the shadow owner's paranoia, fear, aggression, and obsession toward the source of their distorted desires. The palace owners themselves are also shadows of their true self. Upon having their treasure stolen, the distorted shadow of the palace owner will disintegrate, and so will the palace along with them. After a week, the individual in reality will confess to his wrongdoings and admit his guilt and shame. This phenomenon is actually also supported by Jung's theories. He wrote, "If and when an individual makes an attempt to see his shadow, he becomes aware of and often ashamed of those qualities and impulses he denies in himself." Stealing the palace owner's treasures in Persona 5 represents this contact between shadow and self. Joker and friends decide that they can use the power of their personas to steal the hearts of corrupt and evil people. Thus, the Phantom Thieves were created, a vigilante group consisting of Joker and friends who infiltrate the unconscious minds of distorted people and steal their hearts. But wait, how do they even find these individuals with distorted delusions? And does every person with these delusions have a palace all to themselves? Introducing Mementos. After completing the first palace, Morgana introduces the team to an area in the metaverse known as Mementos. He describes it as
Everyone's palace.
and explains that
A palace as grand as the previous castle only forms when a person's wishes are extremely distorted. So instead of many individual palaces, the general public has one gigantic shared palace. Think of it as the collective unconscious.
in other words, people who don't have distorted delusions as severe as Kamoshida will reside in Mementos, where there is a shadow version of every person in Tokyo. Therefore, if the Phantom Thieves want to steal the hearts of mildly disturbed people, such as a Stalker X, all they have to do is head down to Mementos and fight the shadow individual there. The collective unconscious is what Carl Jung based almost all of his theories on, and it is even explicitly referred to in the game. Jung described the collective unconscious as primordial images, or archetypes as I have called them, belonging to the basic stock of the unconscious psyche and cannot be explained as personal acquisitions. Together they make up that psychic stratum which has been called the collective unconscious. In other words, the collective unconscious is a shared layer of the human mind that is affected by societal, cultural, and historical influences. This is exactly how Mementos operates in Persona 5. For example, when it is allergy season in the game, the entirety of Mementos is affected, and some shadows may be sleepy due to allergy medication. Through this, we can see that shadows in Mementos are affected by shared experiences in society, such as the weather. In conclusion, Mementos is an exact representation of what Jung described and defined as the collective unconscious. In conclusion, Through the many direct references and allusions to Carl Jung's theories, Persona 5 bases its mechanics and plot on the field of psychoanalysis, putting emphasis on a collective unconscious and archetypes. These references show us how strongly the game is rooted in Jung's theory specifically. It is amazing to see how a modern-day Japanese video game company, Atlus, explores and represents psychoanalytic theories from the 1900s in this massively successful JRPG, Persona 5.